What is going on, friends? Welcome to another episode of the Year One Wrestling Podcast, a show that dives deep into the early stages and formation of your favorite professional wrestlers, bringing out their struggles, their fears, and most importantly, their most interesting stories. I'm your host, the King of Chaos, Logan Black, and thank you so much for checking us out on whatever platform you get your podcasts on. We are all about showing love here, so if you dig what you hear, or you just feel like being awesome, go ahead, show some love, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, tell a friend, retweet and follow on social media, anything you can do to help us get the word out on the show. Before we go any further, it's been a really tough, weird, hard, we could use tons of adjectives to talk about 2020, but this was my first year ever trying a venture like this in terms of like podcasting. I've been on a ton of podcasts, done tons of interviews, and I just really wanted to try something different with this show, give a different angle into, the little bubble that is professional wrestling. And, if I can get sentimental for a moment, big surprise, I just want to extend a massive thank you to every single guest that we've had on the show, every guest that I've interviewed that hasn't been on the show yet, future guests, so to speak. And I think most importantly, anybody who, ever downloaded the show, everyone who subscribed, everyone who follows along or, retweets or @s me on social media, anybody who's doing anything to kind of, make this show more than just me yelling into the void. Shit, like I can't thank you guys enough. This is the response that I've gotten for this show in, less than a year that it's been out there. Man, it has been truly overwhelming, and I did not expect it to be what it is. Even though this is still, a very small DIY podcast, the fact that you guys reach out and hit me up and talk about the guests and, show them love too, I genuinely can't ask for anything better. So thank you guys so very much. The other ways you guys have been super supportive of the show, and I know that it's come from this show because there's really not a whole lot of other places I hype this stuff, especially this year when there was no shows or venues to promote myself on, and I'm talking about t-shirts, merch, 8x10s, all that fun stuff. Where could you get that? Two different places. The first being my direct store, the online merch table, if you will, kingofchaosnyc.bigcartel.com. You could pick up anything that exists on my normal merch table, including the brand new Legacy of Chaos shirt. Or if you feel like checking out some stuff that I will never ever have printed, never ever have at my merch table, you could only get that at one place, and that's my Pro Wrestling Tees store. That's prowrestlingtees.com/King of Chaos NYC. Another way that you can support me, support the show, and also get dope wrestling available to you streamed at any time. I'm talking hundreds upon hundreds of promotions, thousands of shows. Where can you get this? Independent Wrestling TV, of course, where you could check me out on Limitless Wrestling, Synergy Wrestling, Blitzkrieg Wrestling, Uncanny Attractions. You can check me out all over the damn place. And if you have not already signed up, of course, you gotta sign up with the promo code Logan Black, one word, all caps, and you get your first 5 days free. But as I say, and I will continue to say, well into year 2 of the Year One podcast, literally anything that you do for this show, whether it be the listens, the retweets, shouting me out, anything that you do in terms of supporting the show is greatly appreciated by yours truly. Now on to this week's guest, none other than Billy Brash. I had met Billy for the first time a number of years ago at a local show in New York City. He was the wild card in the match. I knew Jeff Cannonball, who was also in that match. I knew Vince Steele, who was also in that match, but here was this guy, Billy Brash. I knew he was a North Carolina guy, but I'd honestly never seen his work. And you know that you got something dope going on when that person shows up, you shake hands, you say hey, you're hello, and within 5 minutes, it is as if you've known this person your entire life. Me, him, and Jeff Cannonball, the punk rock discussions that we had were just so much fun. And it's interesting because, I give Jeff a lot of guff about being, a bit of a punk rock or music hipster, even though, I'm secretly one myself. But, Jeff had to absolutely shit on, like, every band that Billy and I were talking about. But, it was all in good fun. And the match was great. Like, I genuinely remember that match being so much fun to the point where the promoters put Billy and I against each other in a singles match a couple of shows later. And, whether it be in ring or out of ring, there was chemistry there. And, that's not something you find all the time. But I think that this interview speaks more to Billy breaking in or just being somebody. You know what? I'm going to take all that back and just say Billy is a unique person. Why do I say that? Well, his breaking into wrestling was unique. He is a daredevil. We talk about this at length on the show. The guy must have a death wish. Unique upbringings, unique stories within the business. Billy is just unique. He's one of a kind, and he's different. One of the other things that I truly admire about Billy is his determination. When I had first met him, he was fresh off training at the New Japan Dojo in California. Shared some of that training with me, which, by God, like how that man survived that is ridiculous. How anybody survives that, and I know that that's like, the New Japan training is insane, as it should be. But then prior to the podcast, him and I had been speaking and just, kind of shooting the shit, catching up, so to speak. And he talked about how, yeah, man, the gyms are all closed, so I've been sitting here in my house, filling up book bags with, whatever I've got around, and doing bicep curls with a book bag on each side and a hockey stick, like that's just wild. But it speaks so much to how motivated this guy is to, in the face of this pandemic, still keeping in shape. I had a wrestling student the other day. We were going through some cardio, and this kid was crapping out so early. And I get it. It's not supposed to be easy. But he's like, yeah, I haven't worked out in, a couple of months. It's like, well, what have you been doing? Billy Brash is out here lifting book bags and hockey sticks. And you can't do some squats at home? Come on, man. Wild stuff to me. But again, just speaks to Billy's character as a guy who does not quit, which is a concept that I genuinely hope does come across in this podcast. At some point, I definitely know that I need to get my tag partner, Chris Bene, on here to talk about hanging out with Billy and Main State Posse and the Ugly Ducklings and Coach Mikey, of course, down in Florida for Fest Wrestling. And just the craziness that exists with that. To my understanding, those were some wild times. And I love to hear these crazy stories. But we're just going to get started with this show. If you're a wrestling fan who is not familiar with Billy's work, I genuinely suggest getting on that. Check out stuff on YouTube, stuff on IWTV. The guy, I cannot stress enough how much of an absolute stud he is. So let's get right to it. Billy Brash on the Year One Wrestling Podcast. So Billy Brash, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Super stoked to have you on. This is going to be a lot of fun. You're one of those dudes in wrestling for me where it's like, and the past 10 minutes or 15 minutes at this point worth of conversation is more than evident of the fact that like you make friends with somebody in the business, you don't see them for a long time, and then you chat it up like no time has passed.
Exactly. Yeah. That's one of the one of the things I really love with wrestling. I say it all the time too, especially when I'm in like big groups. So, well, first of all, let me say thanks for having me on and shit too. But I say it all the time, like when we're at like big groups or at shows or something, it doesn't matter where you come from, what walk of life you're from, nothing. You're automatically accepted by these people just because of the one thing you have in common. You know what I mean? Like wrestling, like I've met some of my greatest lifelong friends from wrestling, No,
it's the truth, man. We're all a bunch of weirdos and miscreants, and somehow we all unite under wrestling.
Yep.
So let's just hop right into it, man. What are your earliest memories of professional wrestling?
I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, so they used to still run kind of the territories. Sort of. It wasn't really territories when I was growing up, but like when my family was growing up and stuff, they wrestled at the Township Auditorium every Tuesday night. And I was, when I was younger, I was still able to catch like the tail end of that. And then like when WCW was around, they came at least, once every couple months or so to the Township too and stuff like that. So like that was my first experience, was like actually watching it growing up, watching it, and then getting to go and see people like Junkyard Dog was like my favorite wrestler. Like getting to see him like at the Township and stuff like that. It was incredible.
There's such a difference in actually going to see wrestling as a kid, like live, than it is to seeing it on TV. Because, you could be a fan, you could sit, in your home and watch it, Saturdays when it usually was on. But like going there as a kid, like that is real life superheroes, man. That is as close as it gets to opening up a comic book and seeing it right in front of you.
Yeah, and like the cool thing with it is that every single time my dad used to get seats that were near the stage. Like they would so the way it's set up, like it's a regular like play theater, but they would move stuff around and put the ring in the middle, and then like this actual stage area where normal shows would be like the locker room for the boys. So my dad would always get seats on that side, and while we were watching the show, he'd always like nudge me and tell me to look back, and you see all the boys just sitting there in like chairs like we do now with towels around their necks just watching the show.
So did you have any kind of background in like wrestling or sports prior to hopping into training?
No, like it was just something me and my dad always watched together and stuff like that, and like I played hockey and stuff like that, but nothing like I didn't play any real sports when I was in school or anything like that. But me and my dad just always watched it, and then it's a really crazy story, like how it all came about to actually getting into wrestling. I was working, I was a firefighter for 11 years, but early on in my career there, I was working for them, and it was like right during like the housing market crash and like the first like financial breakdown that the country was having, and they were talking about laying off new hires, and I would have been one of those people that would have gotten cut, when it came down to it. And I was telling my dad, I was talking with him. I had met Coach Mikey randomly at a show. Some of our friends were in a band, and his friends were in a band, and they were playing together. We met each other randomly, and it re-sparked my love of wrestling. And I told my dad, I was like, well, if I get laid off, I'm just going to move to Atlanta, go to WWA 4 when Mr. Hughes was running that school. And my dad knows how I am. When I get something like that in my head, like I'll just fucking quit and just go. And he was like, well, don't quit, like, because he knows how I am. So he started doing some research, and he found a local show. It was semi-local. It was about 45 minutes away. It was about an hour and a half to go train every time we went. And we found a guy, and I'm not even going to give him credit because he really didn't train us at all. He just gave us a ring, and me and my dad actually like pretty much taught each other how to wrestle. And
oh man,
yeah, like this is how bad the training was. By the second training session, we were taking back body drops, and by the fifth training session, he had nothing else to show us. A month in, we were doing shows.
Dude, so it's so funny that you talk about that. I had a very, very, very similar upbringing into wrestling, and Johnny Rods was my trainer, but Johnny Rods hasn't trained anybody since like the Taz and Dudley's days when he had those guys there. Like he hasn't been in the ring. Literally same deal. Like my second day there, I'm doing back bumps and like taking arm drags and hip tosses, and then 3 weeks in, I had my first match, and I was completely beyond unprepared. And but I was also like amongst how many other people there who a month in was getting their first match. It's crazy how this business works, man.
It really is. It really is. Like it's, and like that level of where you had your training and all that stuff, like it makes a difference in the long run too, like, because it was when I was my first year in wrestling, our trainer decided that my dad was going to be his tag partner, and they were going to wear a mask and do this whole deal. And then he gave me I had 11 different tag partners my first year in wrestling, and I tagged against them every single show, and they just beat the shit out of me every single show.
Jesus, man. That's a rough way in.
Yeah.
So I mean, we get that where we started. We talked about the first day of training. What were your goals once you actually started getting in there and picking it up?
Like, honestly, when I first started, it was just something I had wanted to do. I'd always had these certain things I wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to be a fireman, I wanted to be a professional wrestler, and I wanted to be a stunt car driver. I've done 2 of the 3. There's still time to go be a stunt car driver if I want to, I guess. But
yeah, you just like staring death in the face. Is that what it is?
A fucking adrenaline junkie, man. Yeah. I gotta have that. I need that excitement. Like these last 4 months of just sitting at home have been brutal.
Yeah, I get it. Like, I mean, I'll tell you what, man. I would say that I couldn't even consider myself an adrenaline junkie literally after hearing you go pro wrestling, firefighting, and stunt car driving. It's just like there's no comparison at that point. Like, sure, I like getting dumped on my head and jumping into barbed wire and all that horseshit, but it's like, yeah, I'm not hopping in a car to crash it into a wall. That's some serious fucking shit right there.
Yeah, I like, and like the crazy thing is, man, like when I was younger, like in high school, I used to like do that shit all the time. Like I would drive down the road and like just hang out the window and shit, and, like steer with my feet and fucking just do shit I had no business fucking doing and shit that there's no reason I should have lived through. You know what I mean? Like just ridiculous stuff. Like that's how my brain works. Like if I get the idea and it sounds reasonable, I'll give it a shot, and then we'll see if it was a good idea or not later.
See, here's these parallel lives yet again, except mine to the much shittier extreme, which is where it usually goes. You would take the car and you'd hang out the window and drive with your feet. I would steal cars and fucking just fuck my way around all of Brooklyn and manage to not get my ass. Like, again, when you were like, oh, I have no idea how I'm alive. Yeah, same here, except very different circumstances.
Yeah, see, if I tried to steal shit around here, fucking, it's a small little podunk town. Fucking people would know. You know what I mean? I'd get caught.
oh yeah, no, I mean, I
anonymity when it comes to shit like that.
right, no, Brooklyn is like, that shit's bound to happen, especially, at that point in Brooklyn. Now, it's been gentrified enough. So talk to me. Who else was helping you out at this point when you're just getting started? Who helped you learn? Who helped you kind of get out there and do your thing?
So I spent about a year of just doing that one show. Wherever my trainer got us booked is where I went, because he didn't want me going other places because it would lower my draw ability to his show. Like fucking, carny shit that they do fucking. But Lodi, one of Raven's flock, sound guy Lodi.
Dope.
He was one of the guys that was on the show and was around regularly. And, he started training John Schuyler and Brady Pierce up at Highspots, and then he offered me to come up there and train with him on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We would go up there at noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we would drive up to Charlotte about an hour and a half each way. We'd drive up and we'd train with him, and that's who really helped me figure out what wrestling was. Like my trainer called tackle drop down hip toss a bump jump toss. That's what I thought it was called. Like, and the first time I called it, Lodi looked at me and was like, "What did you? What was that?" And I was like, "Is that not what it's called?" And he was like, "No, no, not at all." So like he took me under his wing and took me on the road. And, like he took us up to Pittsburgh, this RWA show up there that we used to run, little small steel town. It was like 30 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. Like it was those places, like this little small community where everyone knows everyone. They will eat you alive. Like, really good experiences and stuff, like good hard crowds. And he never let up on us. Like we had to stick to our diet. We had to stick to our training, and all that kind of stuff, so like that was really beneficial that, he took the time to help me out when I was first starting out.
It sounds kind of like he was an actual trainer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like actually getting in there and helping people out and doing the things that, at this point you find, good trainers do.
Right. And like one of his best friends is Charles Robinson, ref for WWE, and he would come in occasionally. Yeah, we would train at Highspots, and he would come in occasionally and ref matches for us, so like that type of stuff, like that's you can't pay for that type of, inside knowledge, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah, it's got to be one of the benefits of training in like, at Highspots or just North Carolina in general, is that there's so much rich wrestling history there and so many people, on a high level involved in that area, like where I think New York didn't, especially when I was breaking in, didn't necessarily have that, at least in terms of like the training aspect of things.
Right.
Because, like, Homicide was already, like, traveling the world on the road. Amazing Red was, like, already, traveling on the road. They weren't sticking around and really training too many people at that point. A couple of years later they were. but like New York didn't really have anybody stopping and working with anybody until, years after I broke in. But it sounds like, again, you had Lodi down there. Highspots itself is just full of people who've been, working at a high level for years. Charles Robert. I mean, it just sounds like a really good hub to learn.
It really is. It's insane. That's always been one of my favorite conversations having with people. Like when I started traveling was like, who's the local vet around here? You know what I mean? Like, who's the guy in this area? And they always ask, like, who you guys got down there? It's like, Rock and Roll Express was on a bunch of shows with me when I was first starting out. Barbarian, Warlord, like Nikita Koloff lives in Greenville, would just randomly pop into shows and like sell people his energy drink that he had and shit like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so many people that live there and are still there and still, come out and just hang out at shows and stuff.
Yeah, man, it sounds pretty legit. Like I said, every time I've ever been down to North Carolina, it's always been a hell of a learning experience, and I've always been on shows with guys who, the second time, the last time I was there, which is, Jesus, forever ago, fucking Magnum TA showed up and was just like chilling in the locker room with people and chatting things up. The time before that, I got to, chat it up with Chris Hamrick, just like, helping everybody out, put their matches together.
I love Hamrick. Like, I see Hamrick, or I was seeing him on a regular basis. He was helping out at a show in Georgia. I love that dude, man. Like, he's hilarious. Like, he sends me messages and shit now, like just random stupid memes and shit like that. Like, to me, like, I still can't imagine. Like, to me, like, that shit still blows my mind. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, man. It's crazy when you start hitting up with some of these dudes that you watched at some point, and like they just end up being so cool like that. It's still like, again, like I sound like a fucking fanboy over here.
Because it always goes the other way just as many times too.
Oh, certainly. That's the truth, man. The absolute truth. Brooklyn Brawler's a monster piece of shit. I don't mind saying that.
There's a bunch of shitty dudes that I've met, that you meet and you're like, guys, this dude is one of my heroes, and then you actually are around them for all of 10 minutes. You're like, fuck you, you're a fucking garbage human.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing how there really is no like middle ground on that. It's either these people are really awesome or fucking deplorable, and it's you can't be like halfway on anybody.
Yeah, there's no one who's just kind of a dick.
Yeah, wrestling is all about those extremes, man.
Right.
So, talk to me. Were you Billy Brash from the get-go, or did you have a gimmick early on that was different from what you got now?
The name has always been the same. I took that name, I had a notebook full of names that I wrote down. We talked about this before, it came up in like the punk hardcore scene around in Columbia and stuff like that. And so I always really liked like the last name that meant something, like Johnny Rotten. You know what I mean? Like that sounds like something when you hear it, So I always like the alliterations too. So I tried to stick with the double B just to keep it easy. And Billy Brash was the one that I stuck with. William was kind of a family name, so I just shortened that down and made it simple. And then Brash just pretty much describes me to a T.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly front a hardcore band with that name.
Right.
So let's talk about your first match.
Okay.
Let's go into detail on it. Just lay it out for us, man. What was that first match like? Who was it against? What do you remember from it?
It was a tag match. I was firefighter Billy Brash when I came out, because it's good idea to have a gimmick like that, and it was true to life, so why not stick with it? It was easy. So, but I did like a lot of lucha and shit like that, and I tagged against my dad and my trainer, and I had another one of the students that he taught before me was my tag partner, and it was really fun, man. Like, we went and did it was crazy because AR Fox and Jonathan Gresham were there. It was like they were making their debut at that little company too. It was a place called CWA in Orangeburg. They were wrestling each other. It was when Gresham was doing Hero Tiger. He was still doing that gimmick. Like, that's how long ago it was. And I always loved lucha, so like I did like a lot of lucha stuff in my match, and a lot of like top rope arm drags and different crazy things like that. And when I came in the back, Gresham come up and he was like, was that you doing all that lucha? And I was like, yeah. He was like, we got to have a match. We've yet to have that match ever, but still, like, that's the one thing I clicked to. Like, that dude was so fucking good even back then. Like, to have him come and be like, I want to work with you on my first day was, you know what I mean? That's fucking a memory I'll have forever.
Yeah, that's dope to have. Literally just dope to have anybody give you any kind of feedback who, like, they know what the fuck they're talking about. Let alone someone you're like after your first match, like, oh, we need to do some business here.
Right, and I mean the match was pretty shitty. It was pretty shitty, but he liked what I did, so that was cool.
So I feel weird, like we skipped over this major detail that you brought in, or rather I skipped it over, and didn't go into it because it's so unique. But breaking in with your father, let's really focus on that for a moment, because that's just, you're not going to hear that story ever. That's a very unique story. Talk to me just like any kind of details you can about that.
So, like, my parents were very young when they had me. They were both 17 when I was born. My dad turned 18 like a month after I was born, you know, so they were very young. So we've always been very close because, you know, we're not that far off in age, you know. So, and me and him have always watched wrestling and stuff, and he always wanted to do it. He even tried to go and train when he was younger, but he was just so skinny back in the 80s, you know, they were like, the only thing we could teach you how to be is a ref. Like, they wouldn't even think about teaching him to wrestle just because of his size. You know, even though he's 6'2", he was only like 185 pounds. So they were like, no thanks, you know, you can be a ref, but that's about it. So, like, when I said that I was going to do it, and then he found the place to go and actually train, he was like, let's do it, you know. And we're ultra competitive, especially with each other. Like, I'm not very competitive in life, like, in general, like, I just don't care. But when it comes to me and him, we're super competitive, you know, because we've always been the type, like, we pick up things really quickly, like we both do. So we always push each other. So every training session was literally just me trying to push him and him trying to push me. That's, you know, that's how we got to doing like back body drops by like the second class, because, you know, the dude didn't have anything else to teach us. We were like, let's just do crazy shit, you know. So but yeah, we trained for about a month, and then we started doing shows, and he wrestled for a couple, you know, probably 3 or 4 years or so, and then he had his fun, you know. He did his little bit of traveling on the weekends and had a good time with it. And, you know, he says all the time, I'm too old, my body hurts. So
yeah, that's such an insanely unique story, and just like super dope to hear, just like kind of having that bonding with somebody, to be able really to, you know, push each other so hard and, you know, have that family bond. It's craziness.
Yeah, it was really fun, man. It was really fun. Really cool. Really, it's something you know, it's something that, you know, like you said, no one gets, and something I'll cherish forever.
Oh, that's fucking dope to hear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's switch gears a bit on here, and you know, I always give in the intro that, you know, the podcast itself is, you know, about all the, you know, the most interesting stories and all that, but also a lot of the struggles. So I want to talk about, or rather ask the question, was there any point where you really began to doubt your place in professional wrestling early on, or did you always kind of have the confidence to keep going?
Not early on, but about 3 years ago, I quit for a solid year. Like, I was done. But, you know, before, I had always wanted to, you know, to make it as far as possible, but I always say, like, I was really just playing at it, because I worked for the fire department, so that's literally 24 on, 48 off, so every third day you're at work. So one day out of my weekend, I had to be at work, so it really screwed up traveling and stuff like that. So I didn't take it too serious, and I just had fun doing it. And then I met a girl, and we were talking about getting married and stuff, so I decided it was time to just take a break from it. You know, I really wasn't loving it like I used to. Like, I remember the day I decided, all right, that's it, I really need to walk away, was I was sitting in the locker room, and I was thinking about what I could be doing if I was home instead of, you know, excited to be there. And when you're that absent-minded, like, it just leads to someone getting hurt or something like that. So I decided to walk away, and I took a year off, got really fat. I got up to like 250 pounds of just fat, like just sitting at home doing nothing, and just, didn't have any reason to really go to the gym. And then luckily all my friends, they started doing a lot, like the Ducks and Coach Mikey, and people were getting signed left and right. James Drake, Anthony Henry, and like the gymnastic boys were everywhere. And they never let me lose touch, so they always kept in touch with me. And then like through seeing that, it was their subtle way of like not letting me get too far away, and it worked.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of not only have your 1 foot within the business if you've taken that time out, but also while you're in the business, have that 1 foot outside to kind of let it level you out. Because I don't know, personally, I always feel like you see the people who just get completely lost in whatever it is going on, and it's really easy to just kind of get disenfranchised with pro wrestling if it's literally everything that you've got, and like every contact, every friend, every social gathering is wrestling based. It comes really, really easy to just not want to be part of it anymore. So you kind of need to keep yourself in that balance of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, I personally think.
Oh, for sure, man. That burnout is real, and it was the best thing that I did was take that time off, because I came back and I knew that this was really what I wanted to do. I didn't want to just be, just a regular dude with a 9 to 5 all the time, because it just sucked. So,
yeah, as somebody who admits that they want to be, driving cars into walls and stuff and stunts, like I can't imagine.
Right. And like that was the thing. Like, and I actually decided to quit the fire department and walk away. And I've been wrestling full time as my full time income for the last 2 years.
That's the dopest thing, man. When you can just walk away and then hop into something that you absolutely love doing and make that living from it. It's fucking always chef's kiss on that shit.
It's that old saying, you never know what you can do as long as you have that safety net. Like, and that was the thing. I had that safety net of that job. Like, I was 11 years in. I was almost close to retirement, like almost halfway to retirement. It was like, but it's not what I wanted to do. It's not what I wanted to do. So I just said, fuck it. We'll see what happens.
That's the truth, man. So if we could hop in the time machine right now, and Billy Brash of today could speak to Billy Brash day one of training, what advice would you give yourself?
Fucking go all in. Quit, move, go all in. Don't fucking play with it. Go.
I mean, that is, again, we're talking about unique shit with this interview. You are the only person to have said that, and I think that is as really legit as it. Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people, it's everyone has their own story. Everybody has their own unique story. So, some people are like, hey, don't go to this place, or hey, don't give up. But I think it's really indicative of your personality and just like who you are as a person and as a wrestler for you to just be like, fuck it, just go, 0 to 90, just fucking go all out and go for it. And I think that's an important lesson to learn too, because there really are. I mean, it's the truth. There are so many people who've got, all the potential in the world, but kind of, just kind of rest on that safety net, or even just kind of rest on wanting to be somebody who just, kind of wrestles every once in a blue when, they've got the potential to really make something of themselves.
Right. And that's like when I was helping out doing some training at a school down here in Columbia, the Palmetto Wrestling Academy, with my buddy Ethan Case. It's his school that he runs. But like I go down there and help train the kids. I did more so back when he first opened. I gotta make time to get back down there again. But that's one of the things that I always told them is like, you don't have to want to make it to WrestleMania to be in wrestling. Like, that's completely okay. It's completely okay to be fine with just doing shows once a month, twice a month, like for the same company. Like, that's completely okay. If that's what you're into, then do that. But if you're training, you're going to train like you want to be at WrestleMania. You know what I mean? There's still no excuse for being lazy in the ring. Like, you're still going to have the same cardio and stamina. You just won't need it as much.
Dude, I said that to my students when I was training kids, like from the get when it came to them. Like, look, I could sit here, we could take your money, and I can just, sit back and watch you guys nearly injure each other. Or I could sit there and I could train you to the point where you're getting, the absolute best training that I could possibly provide, burn you out with the cardio, burn you out with the moves, but you're going to learn this well. Like, I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't try and make you the best and bring out the most of your potential.
Right. I mean, you'd be pissed off if you signed up for a Zumba class and you weren't sweating at the end of it. So
there you go, man. That's the
got work to
truth.
do,
So we've hit my favorite part of these interviews because I've got a theory, and that theory is that the oddest, weirdest, most unique human beings that you meet ever in your life always find their way to you during your first year in professional wrestling. So Billy Brash, can you tell us about who is the oddest, weirdest, most unique personality that you came across early on?
My first year in wrestling, the coolest, scariest, most awkward fucking handshake I ever had in my life was with Boogeyman. I used to always get to the show like hours early because it was the one show I was doing. So I would get there early. I'd help set up and do all that stuff. And then I would just use that extra time as ring time. And I got there early, and he's already there, already in full makeup, and already dressed, like just hanging out in the back, like 3 hours before the show. And I came in, it's just me and him, and I set my bag down. I was like, introduced myself like you're supposed to, and shook his hand. And he literally, this is no exaggeration, he held on to my hand and shook it for a solid 5 minutes, like just held it like. And the double hand over hand, like the double just, and he like he's in full gear. Like, so I'm seeing Boogeyman, but he is talking so soft and so nice. He's like, brother, I'm just happy to be alive. I'm just happy to be here. It's been a great day. And like he just keeps going for 5 minutes like that. And I was fucking freaked out like the whole time.
Dude,
oh yeah, no, I've done several shows with him since, and every experience since that first time has been completely shitty. He's just been shitty at every show. Yep, same fucking thing. Dirty worm dirt fucking everywhere. Big leaguing. He even the last time he was supposed to work with, I think he was supposed to work with George South he was supposed to work with George at AML, and they flew him in. And his flight got delayed like a little bit, and they were main event. Like, he could have been there by intermission, and he refused to come because he wouldn't have time to do his makeup.
Ugh.
Yep.
Dude, this world of wrestling is just so fucking wacky.
Yeah.
and people like that, dude, just do not make it any easier for the rest of us.
Right. You get on TV once, man, and then you can fucking do whatever you want, it seems.
I guess that's his theory behind it. Before we close out here, I always like to have my guests do a little something for me because, we all come from different gimmicks. And you mentioned being firefighter Billy Brash, which is certainly a bit different from what you are right now. So I and the rest of the Year One Wrestling Podcast fans would like to hear you go right back in that time machine, dial it back, and give us a promo as firefighter Billy Brash.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't think firefighter Billy Brash ever got to cut a promo.
Well, here's his chance. Here's the opportunity for him, to get it together. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just, a little something for channeling that energy.
Well, Logan Black, I tell you what, it's me and you, the King of Chaos, against firefighter Billy Brash this Saturday in Orangeburg, South Carolina. You're coming to try and take my CWA Cruiserweight title, even though we both don't fit in the weight description for the Cruiserweight division. The promoter doesn't care. He's going to put us in there anyway. He's going to give us 10 minutes. He's going to try and call our entire fucking match, but we're going to do what we want anyway. And then he's going to say, I'm glad I called it that way. I'll see you in the ring.
Fucking brilliant, man. I love it. Love it. Dude, where can we find you on social media?
Instagram, Billy Brash, Twitter at the Billy Brash, and then Facebook's just Billy Brash.
Hell yeah, man. Dude, it was such a pleasure to get you on here and chat you up about this stuff. The stories were all great. All the stuff from the Carolinas is all stuff that, like, I sit here as a fan of Southern wrestling and mark out for. And then just in general, man, you were one of those people who, in wrestling, it just always ends up being that way, or, it goes completely the opposite. But I'm glad that when we did connect, when we were booked to work against each other, it was an immediate connection, and you and I were on the same page, and you are seriously one of those dudes who is just not only fun to watch, not only fun to talk to, but just a hell of a fucking stand-up human being. So thank you so much for getting on this podcast and telling the world your story.
Dude, I really appreciate that, man. It's like me and Coach Mikey say all the time, too, man. Like, wrestling world is comic book nerds, outcasts, and the fucking hardcore punk kids, you know what I mean? And we always seem to fucking gravitate and find each other, And that's been the best part, dude. Fucking coming up, going up to New York, like the old stigma was that everybody up there was fucking assholes. No one was cool. Like, it wasn't like Southern locker rooms. And then you get up there and I meet like you and Jeff Cannonball and, dudes like that who fucking, we all come from similar walks of life, and we just fucking hit it off. That's the best shit, man. That's the shit that you hope for every time. So I really appreciate you having me, dude. It was fun.
Of course, man. It was a lot of fun. And you can't wait to have all this shit completely disappear so that I can get down by you. You can get back up here, to the Northeast, and we can have some more fun.
I'm so fucking ready, dude. I can't fucking stand it sitting at home anymore.
The order in which these guests are scheduled out week to week, I certainly do that in advance, and there's a reason why I picked Billy Brash to be the guy to end Year One's first year of podcast, ending 2020 with this incredible interview and the message that goes along with this one. So thank you, Billy, for being so open with us. Well, before we get out of here, you should go ahead and give us a follow on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Year1Pod. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel in your preferred podcasting app and leave a review. Shout out to Heroes for the music. You can check them out on Spotify. Shout out to Joanna Robinson for all the artwork and design. Judy Chan on all social media. Shout out to the Funkenstein Wrestling Superstore for sponsoring the show, located at the Englishtown Flea Market in Englishtown, New Jersey, on eBay, and they've got a brand new website. Make sure to check them out and give their Facebook page a like for all your wrestling merch needs. That'll be it for this episode of the Year One Wrestling Podcast. I'm Logan Black telling you, be awesome to each other today and into 2020. Peace and love.